Do you find yourself on the defensive with your significant other? Do you find yourself trying to explain the very fiber of your being to them? And it seems that they don't get it. They don't understand. And it seems that you convince them and try to convince them, but, well, you're explaining and falling short. So why is this happening? And better yet, why are we doing this? Hi friends, glad to be back today. And today I'm going to be talking about why we over-explain in our relationships. Why the relationships that are supposed to be, well, the closest relationships we have, the one with our significant other, why it's so challenging. And why does it seem that we are constantly trying to convince themselves of who we are? You know, it's interesting because I find that a lot of folks say, you know, I feel like I'm constantly on the defensive. I feel like I'm constantly trying to explain myself. I feel like I'm trying to convince the other person of my validity, of my honesty, of my truth. And I'm just falling short, and I'm obviously not doing a good job of it, and it's stressing me out. So why do we do this? And the first point that I want to bring up in today's conversation is we want them to understand where we're coming from, right? Because we want to be understood so badly. And usually this goes back to our childhood where we weren't understood, right? We were trying to convince other people of what we stood for or who we are, and we fell short there too. And it seems that we found ourselves in another relationship where we're being misunderstood. And I think one of the most painful things that can happen in your life is when your significant other does not understand you. And even goes a step further as to not only doesn't understand you, but doesn't believe you. And that is overwhelming to most human beings, right? Because the structure of the human concept is to love and be loved, to be heard and understood, and vice versa, right? That's part of the life cycle. That's part of why we're here, right? And to develop deeper connections and relationships and to really understand that other person, but better yet, to really understand ourselves. So when we find ourselves in a relationship where we're over-explaining and trying to convince somebody, not only does that take away from our value and our self-esteem, but it puts us in a position of being defensive, and it also puts us in a position of feeling as though we really can't trust the situation because the person is finding fault with us on a constant basis. The second concept is that we do this because we want them to believe us and trust us, because what they have told us in the past is that they can't trust us or they can't believe us because they don't believe what we're telling them is the truth. And that is very detrimental, especially when you're telling the truth. And see, that's painful when you're being told that you're constantly cheating and you're not, right? I mean, the human condition is I'm doing what I should be doing, but if you keep telling me that I'm doing something wrong that I'm not, I might as well go out and do it anyway, okay? So it's like we're constantly being told that we're not being honest. And that really takes down our self-esteem, right? It also puts a wedge in the relationship. Because if we are being honest and we are being truthful, how is it that this person can't see that? What is happening in their mind that they're creating the narrative that they believe that we're lying? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like a lot of times in these arguments, and I think if you step back and think about it right now, while I'm in this video, while we're talking back to back, that you've been in an argument before and you've had this situation and you have been blue in the face trying to explain yourself. But it seems that no matter what you say and no matter what evidence you provide, it's not good enough. And so that's what is really interesting, is that I think that we're explaining to somebody that's already created their own narrative as to what we've done. And then there's almost absolutely no way of changing that narrative. The third reason why we find ourselves in this situation is that we care so much about what they think about us and their opinion of us. And this is a slippery slope, right? This is a scary place to be. And it happens a lot of times, is that we give so much value to what their opinion is that we try to make sure that they actually see us in the right light. And that can be actually a job in its own, especially if someone really doesn't have a high opinion of us, right? We have to ask ourselves, why am I in a relationship with someone that has such a low opinion of me? That's a side thought, right? But it's interesting because they'll tell us what they think, and then we struggle to try to present, information to the opposite of what they're thinking. And so I feel like a lot of times we have to start gauging how often are we giving them the power over us to have an opinion about us that's not really true to ourselves, right? And so these are reasons why we get into this, which I think is interesting. And the fourth one is that we're in a pattern of doing this because we become used to doing it. Think about it. If you're in a relationship like this where you're constantly explaining yourself, this is the pattern of the mode of operandi that takes place probably more days than not. Isn't it interesting, too, if you start thinking about it, how often do you have the other person explaining themselves? Probably not that often. How often do you question anything that they do? Probably you don't have any time to because you're too busy defending yourself. And when things are good, even if something seems odd about their situation, you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to rock the boat because you're already walking on eggshells on the situation, so you'd rather just not say anything. So the pattern of operandi here in the relationship has become you get told that you've done something, and then you have to explain otherwise. And the fifth reason is that we're constantly on the defensive. We've grown accustomed to this concept, defending ourselves day after day in this relationship. And I don't think this is something that I would want to grow accustomed to, but we do, right? Because when it's consistent and we're going through it, it's just part of life, right? And so it's like, why have we grown accustomed to doing this? Why do we feel like it's necessary? And why does the other person actually feel like they're legitimate to do this? All very good questions. You know, this is not only about pointing out reasons, but it's also to ask questions to get you to think even more about why we're in this situation and how can we make changes to it. The sixth point is that we want them to, well, honestly, this is where it kind of all comes down to, is we want them to see our value. We believe that if they can see our value and they can understand us, that we're validated. And you see, the point that's interesting, though, is that if someone's never going to validate you and you're walking uphill all the time, is this a relationship that you want to be in? Because what we find ourselves is somebody's not validating us, saying, okay, yeah, I see your point, or I get it, or yes, you're right, you weren't doing that, or whatever it is. If we're constantly arguing the point of our value, it's almost like we're in a constant battle within ourselves day after day. So it's not only them seeing our value, but it's an internal battle of us battling our value to try to prove our value to them. Like our value is based on if they see our value? What if they never see our value? Do we have no value? I mean, that's a great question, right? And because I feel that when we give them so much value and power over us, that puts us in the sling, right? Of trying to be understood by them, trying to convince them, trying to prove our value, trying to prove our innocence. Very interesting. And the last point that I want to bring up, point 7, is we are subconsciously deriving our value from this relationship. Yeah. Think about it. The relationship is supposed to be the icing on the cake. It's supposed to be the sprinkles. It's not supposed to be the cake. Another person is not supposed to give you value. Okay, see, that's where there's this, like, I don't know, this disconnect, right? Because we believe that by being in this relationship or by being married or by being with this person, we are so much more valuable. And what happens is if they leave us, they take our value with them, right? And why would we ever give anybody that kind of power over us? I mean, the point of a relationship is not two halves coming in and making a whole, which has been this, concocted idea from day one on relationships from people that really just don't know what relationships are about and what they're supposed to be about. So it's really about two whole people coming together to make two whole people, right? And they happen to live together and get along for the most part and respect each other and unconditionally love each other. That's the concept. It's not that hard. But the thing is that we end up being told over and over again throughout the processes of being born and through the relationship with our parents, and our parents didn't know, and all that great stuff. But we believe that our value is derived by the people in our life, by the stuff in our life, by the house in our life, by the car in our life, by the title of our job, and especially by that person that we sleep in the bed next to. And so I want you to think about that. Because we are subconsciously deriving our value from the relationship, and a lot of times because of that, we're giving them power over us to judge us. Is there something that can be augmented? How do we break this cycle? How do we do that? Because what I've found is that until we figure out how to break this cycle, and until we figure out how to not get triggered by this, we can't really see the forest through the trees. Because if we can stop being triggered to explain ourselves, right? Then we can begin to see what? The programming involved in the relationship. Because we're no longer on the hot seat anymore, and we're starting to see things a little bit for how it really is. And so I think this is interesting. If you can journal a little bit on this, and the next time that you are convinced that you need to defend yourself, or the next time that you are told that you are not trustworthy, or that you're selfish, or that you're a liar, I want you to catch up on and just analyze what's happening in this pattern. Why do I feel like I need to explain to this person? And what do I need to begin to really see things clearly? In the next video that's coming up later on, I'll be talking about the trigger, what triggering does to us. And really, a really neat thing about it is there's actually an opportunity behind the trigger to allow us to know, well, what's really happening and how to really begin to get our power back. I hope that you've liked this video and it's given you some clarity, and also maybe turn the lights up a little bit in the situation that you're dealing with in your relationship. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and you can also become a member here, and there's members only video that's really neat as well. That's an option and opportunity. And in the comments section below, if you've been in the situation or currently in the situation, what are some of the things that you're having to defend yourself on? What are some of the things that your significant other doesn't believe in you? And how long has this pattern of discussion been going on in your relationship? Thank you again for watching my video. I hope that it has impacted your life, and don't forget to live your true life.